All right. Well, first of all, Sherill, you are in a room with 80 powerful women who want to join you right now. And they are all red jackets and directors. And, you know, I was telling them you're from Pigeon, Michigan. So why don't you describe where that would actually be?
Well, if y'all look at the weather map, Michigan's shaped like a mitten. And if you can find the Detroit area down at the base of the thumb and you traveled up 2.5 hours up into the top of the thumb, on the weather map, you can see a little sliver. There's actually like a rose thorn that shows up on the side of the thumb. And I live on the south shore of that sliver. And if I tried to go south, I would fall in the lake because my house sits on the bay. I would fall right in the water. If I tried to go due east, I only have 7 miles. If I try to go north, I have 18 miles. And if I go west, I have, oh gosh, I don't even know. It's probably 40 minutes to the other side of the county. So everywhere that I have to go, I have to drive an hour and a half due south on 2 secondary roads to get me to an expressway exit to get out into the state. So I'm extremely isolated. When Linda talks about the hollers of Kentucky, I'm telling you, it is same but different mother up here in the rural area of Michigan.
Well, you know, what is amazing, Sherill, is what kind of volume and business you've done from this little remote place. Tell me, I mean, I don't have your accolades sheet, but I want you to tell me your biggest wins, because I think you have the most records of most $1 million years.
Well, I'm still doing it. I'm still producing million. And I got to tell you, 38 years ago when I started my business, I thought that I was limited by my location. And in that first year, in my struggle to grow, somehow I discovered that the phone has no limit, that if you can get on your phone, that you can talk to any city in the United States, that it didn't matter where you lived, that if you had communication. And through the years, my phone and my computer, but I've got to tell you, Linda, if I could have one weekend with you, I probably should come and clean your house and stay with you for one weekend, because if I had just 50% of your media savvy, I literally could beat the world. But I have discovered that these things, that it's not so much where I live, it's that I'm willing to reach out or to travel and to work where she lives. That it has no bearing. You know, people are all caught up. The company sends all the women in the company that live in little tiny towns in western U.S. They send me all these people to come to me to ask me these questions. And I think it has no bearing where I live. It's not where I live, it's where she lives. And I just have never let that limit me.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, you know, okay, let me tell you the first time I ever fell in love with Sherill Steinman. I was like a new director. We were at the vendors and I was stalking you. And I was kind of hiding behind this little screen, so you wouldn't have seen me, but I was studying you. And, you know, how we are in Mary Kay, we admire people from a distance. And you were buying, now I remember everything about that moment in time. You were buying a mirror that was super rock and cool at the time in the vendor, and you were buying it for Mary Kay herself.
Oh, yeah. It had a wolf whistle.
This is what I'm going to give Mary Kay. And I was like, oh my God, she's buying a gift for Mary Kay.
When it opened, it went, woo, woo. And Mary Kay loved that.
It talked.
And she loved it so much. And she said, now, do you really think Connie White and those would let us use it for a star prize? And I went, no. And she says, no, they won't. I mean, Mary Kay always acted like those doggone staff members, you know, they're just going to limit us. You know, it was just so funny.
Well,
and do you know where I remember you, Linda?
No.
We had dinner on one of the top trips, and you had the most exquisite soldier jacket on.
Oh, I still have that, Sherill.
Oh my gosh, I was taken with just your poise and everything about you, and you had this fabulous jacket on, and I can remember the entire evening there.
We were in Germany.
And then I came to your house and and there were all your Greek souvenirs and all that, and you had told me that you hurt yourself or something playing hide and seek with the kids. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that.
Anyway,
let's talk about Mary Kay the woman. I explained to you that we've been studying our heritage in America and our heritage of the Tuba National area.
Yep.
And you are our in-house expert on the heritage of Mary Kay the woman. Talk to us about what made her who she is and what made our company so amazing and is still standing after all these years.
You know, I studied Mary Kay. I mean, I really studied the woman. And, you know, when someone passes away, you know, when you think you have them for the lifetime and you've always got them, when we had Mary Kay, I took it for granted. And I would have, when I fell in love with Mary Kay, she had my trust and loyalty for a lifetime. And she had the ability to connect with everyone. And then after she was gone, I started to read every book that I was supposed to read on the when I was a new director that I didn't read, and I read all of her books. And when you understand her story, and what I want to do is, I've got all kinds of things here to tell you about the woman, but I want you to know that when you read about Mary Kay and you really study her, and I had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Mary Kay, and she really was, even though she became a national personage, someone that was regarded as one of the top women of the 20th century and the most influential women, that she was rated with Mother Teresa and some of these giants, and Mary Kay was revered as a woman who really did do more for women at that time. And but when you really hear her story and you read about her, that as a child, that she was an only child, her father had tuberculosis, and rather than put him in a sanitarium, that Mary Kay at age 5 was going to be his caregiver. And to think that Mary Kay as a 5-year-old cooked and cleaned and cared for her father and went to the store to buy food to cook his dinner, and that her mother at the time was a cook, and that she would tell Mary Kay what to do, and then Mary Kay was to follow her instructions. At age 5, I have a 17-year-old granddaughter that I have to repeat 3 times to get her to follow instructions. I think Mary Kay at age 5 was able to listen to her mother, and she said, Mary Kay, and forever, Mary Kay would repeat in the most obscure times that how her mother would say, but Mary Kay, you can do it. And Mary Kay, that echoed in Mary Kay's mind for all of her life, and she would repeat it over and over, not only to herself, but to us, you can do it. And not with just a frivolous, you can do it, but a sincere, to the heart, you can do this. And that she grew up very poor, and she had girlfriends in school, and they all had money, and that they went on to college, and Mary Kay was too poor to go to college, and she married the first boy that came along, and he went off to war. And I heard her personally say, yeah, my husband went to war and never returned but didn't die. So he went off to war and abandoned her and her 3 children. And she had to, in an era when today we celebrate single women that are raising children, and we call them sheroes. And in those days, when Mary Kay was a single mom, she was ostracized and she was criticized for being a single woman, that apparently was her fault that her husband left and never came back. And she would talk lots about how she would know that people were talking about her, and how in church her children were unruly, they were naughty, and how one time Ben unscrewed the bolts of the church pew and it crashed, and everybody in the church looked, and she just wanted to die. She just wanted to die because her children weren't the most perfect children. And how years later, when she was working for some of her other companies, that she'd have to go out and do her parties, and Richard was waiting for Mother on the front stoop of their house, and people would go by and say, honey, where's your mama? Because it'd be dusk or dark, and he'd be sitting there on the front stoop of the house, and they'd say, where's your mama? And Richard would say, oh, she's out at a party, you know, as if to say she's out carousing. And Mary Kay said Mary Kay was very sensitive to single moms. And I want you to know that she was so sensitive and intuitive. She could feel people's feelings. When she talked about put a sign. Imagine everybody with a sign around their neck, make them feel important. She's speaking from personal experience. She's speaking from that person who felt inferior and didn't feel loved and felt ridiculed. It was actually a bullying situation. If you really read into her books, she felt bullied all of her life, and she worked for companies where she was smart and on top of her game, and she would train people, and men basically, and they would be moved to positions above her. And she would, one time in one of her books, she tells about how she asked about, well, how come I didn't get that promotion? They said, well, Mary Kay, this man has a family. And she said, well, so do I. But because she was a single female, she was truly marginalized, and she just never got to realize. And then one day she met George. And I often think we don't give George enough credit. You know, George is that man that married her in her later years and said, you don't have to work anymore, Mary Kay. And so she marries George, and she, in those first year or two, she decides that she's going to write a book. She's going to write a book to wrong everything that was ever wrong about women in the marketplace. And she writes this point by point. And George, who is a very smart businessman, said, you have the makings of an amazing business plan. And so together he said, well, what would we manufacture? And Mary Kay says, I know just the thing. And she had been using Mary Kay in goo jars, little jars of goo, from this woman for years. And it was the hide tanner, the original hide tanner's granddaughter. Yep. She goes back, buys the formula for $5,000, starts manufacturing this. They had to borrow every penny. I'm so fascinated with the story. They took every penny they get their hands on, including their children's savings, all friends. Everybody was all in. And 30 days before they open their doors, George has a massive heart attack and dies.
Right.
And if you think about the story behind the story, he had to be so stressed out that he died. I mean, his stress level had to be over the top. Right. So then Mary Kay has to bury him, and there is no money. I mean, I don't think funerals were as expensive then as they are now, but there was no money. And so then here she goes and opens, and she said people told her it was foolish. And she said, but what people didn't understand is if I didn't go forward, I'd have been penniless, and I would have lost everybody's money. And sometimes people don't know the story about Daleen White. Daleen White was George's personal secretary in his former business. And so Daleen was on this folly as a favor to George. So when they started the business on September 13, 1965, I've interviewed Daleen White on this many times.
Yes.
That in this building was Daleen and Mary Kay, Richard and his friend Gerald Allen, that was his buddy, and they were both 21 or 22, and Ron Trammell, who was like 17, and he was going to be the cleanup kid.
Yeah.
And that's who was in that building the day they opened their building. The 9 women didn't come in until maybe the next week or 2 weeks, but on that fateful day, there was only those 5 people sitting in there. And when Mary Kay cut her ribbon, she went into her office and she got down on her knees, and she told the story many times, as did Daleen, that Mary Kay got on her knees and she asked God to bless the company, that she was at a point in her life. There was no money left. George was gone. She had 3 babies out in the other office. People had invested their money. She didn't know, she did know about business, but this was the first time that she was going to have to write the checks. And she was on her knees and she asked God to take her as a business partner. And she vowed that if God would bless this company, that she would remain faithful, that this company would be a God first, family second, career third company, and that women would be free to speak their faith. And I believe that not only was that blessing given to her that day, but we are the beneficiaries of that blessing 53 years later. And if we don't stick to our faith roots and understand that a lot of this is done by faith, not by sight, but by faith. And if you don't understand that, then you're missing some of the blessing that Mary Kay has already has gained for us through that request.
Sherill, there was a conversation. I was fascinated with Daleen White, and like you, just loved being in her space, brought her in to my people many times and had her in my home many times. And there's just so many profound things that people of the great generation talked about that we don't talk about today per se. And one of the stories that Daleen tells, and I'd love your take on this, is she talks about how that Mary Kay offered her half the business, but Daleen's husband wouldn't give her the money or wouldn't allow her to spend the money. Is that a story that you heard?
I don't know if I remember. I don't know if I ever had that conversation with Mary or with Daylene, but I did have. But one of the stories she personally told me was that because she was George's personal assistant, that she was going to be the office assistant of this new baby company. That she was going to manage the office, and that Mary Kay was the one that was supposed to go out and sell the product and build the business. However, Mary Kay couldn't sell the business. She couldn't get the check. She would give away the starter kits. So, I mean, I want you to know that in Mary Kay's infancy, Mary Kay couldn't close those sales. And so they decided early on that Daylene, who was quite business-minded and was very dry, she was going to go out and she was going to get the money, because this company wasn't going to survive if they didn't sell something. And Mary Kay could be in the office and Daylene would bring the people to her to love on. Honestly, and I said, I can see that Mary Kay, Mary Kay was a softie. And I mean, not in later years when the company developed. I know that she was a steel magnolia, you know, but in those early days, Mary Kay was fragile. You know, they had no money. It was either do or die. And I can see that she was put into a position where she just couldn't ask for the check. She just kept giving away the starter kits, and Daylene's the one. They had to trade places, and then Daylene would bring Mary Kay in as the president of the company, which was 5 people. And so I just think it's a God thing. It's certainly not a human thing that this thing should have become a success.
Well, you know, because Daylene talked a lot about those early years, and just, you know, what it was like when it was just the two of them, and that, you know, Daylene's consultant number. And I always got frustrated with the company because Daylene made a promise to Mary Kay on her deathbed that, you know, that she would attend every seminar, all 5 seminars every year. And Daylene kept her word to Mary Kay. So imagine going to 5 seminars at your own expense.
Yeah, I know that.
All 5 seminars, traveled there, and that she would do that. She would do that for Mary Kay, and she traveled. The other really cool thing, Shirl, that you might not know is in one of Daylene's latest years, basically, I would bring someone into the World Headquarters building for our year-end Queen's Banquet, and wow. Daylene was invited one year to that, and Mary Kay had just died, and she was with Mary Kay, you know, like just the day before, and she sang to her, and she sang to my queens the song. She sang to Mary Kay on her deathbed. And that was one of the most touching moments, Shirl, probably of my entire career, and for all the women in my national area who were privileged to be in that room that day, to hear Daylene sing. And she sang just, it was incredible. But no, Daylene's story is that her husband wouldn't let her have the money, or she would own half of Mary Kay today. That's the story.
Well, I'd say that I can understand that. I can see that everybody regarded everything as a folly. You know, nobody had faith. The only people that had faith was Richard and his mother's ability to, you know, tenacity. He could see his mother's tenacity. And even Ben handled the manufacturing part of Mary Kay for years until he retired. And then her daughter Marilyn was a top director up until her life had a different change of things that happened in her life. And so the family really did believe in their mother's tenacity. They really did support their mom. So,
well, I love all the stories, because literally I could bring you in and set you in a room for 15 hours and you would never run out of Mary Kay stories, and you're so gifted in that way. But I remember you telling the story of where you were on the highway listening to the radio one night when the announcer said that Mary Kay died, but the truth was she hadn't died. But
no, it was Marilyn. Marilyn had that Jim Henson's disease. Like she was fine on Friday, and when somebody went to pick her up for church on Saturday, she had passed from that pneumonia that took her. And so they came. I had directors in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I was coming home from a long drive, and it was like 2 a.m, and Joyce Wilson called me and said, "Oh my gosh, Shirley, I think Mary Kay died." And I had an hour in my mind to think, okay, what are the next steps? Because Mary Kay prepared us so well. Mary Kay had one of the things that she did is that she would never, I think wait a minute, I gotta go back up. I believe that in my early days that I saw 3 funeral videos. Mary Kay would make these videos and she'd be sitting by her little pond with the swans. Do you remember that, Linda?
Yeah.
And these would be like, these were her last will and testament videos. And she would talk about how she wanted us to behave and how she wanted the company to go on and how she wanted herself to be remembered. And she would do one, and then 5 years later, she was still here and healthy and happy. So she'd have to do another one. And she did like 3 of them. So in the dark, I had to think to myself, now, okay, what are the steps? What's going to be expected of me? And through tears, I became very strong, and I thought, okay, I know exactly what I have to do. And then an hour later, Joyce calls me back and said, oh, no, it wasn't Mary Kay. It was Marilyn passed, because they called her Marilyn, the cosmetic queen of Dallas. And that's why no one knew that it wasn't Mary Kay. And so there was a lull of about an hour and a half that it went all through Mary Kay. And we had to come to some thoughts of how we were all going to behave. And I for one, I felt very respectful and very happy to think that we all were prepared and knew what to do. And so when Mary Kay finally did pass, I'm telling you, everybody got their plane ticket and they all went to Dallas. They attended the event, and you just felt this responsibility coming on your shoulders that the torch was passed to you. You know, it was our turn to follow up on what Mary Kay's wishes were. And you would ask me who the woman was, and I want your people to hear this. And I want you to know that Mary Kay loved 2 segments of her company the most. She loved everybody, but she had 2 special segments. And the first was she loved her top people. In her 70s to late 70s, she went on every trip. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very important to understand, that she went on her trip so that she could commune, that she could eat breakfast, lunch, dinner. You never spoke to Mary Kay at a respectful distance. That's another thing I remember through my years, is that when you would talk to Mary Kay, you got your face next to her face. You breathed in her air. I often told Kathy Halou and Debbie Moore that they sucked the air out of Mary Kay's lungs. They her face. And she at seminars and career conferences, she came backstage and she'd go down the line, and she wanted to congratulate and praise every single one of her top people. She sent notes to her top people. She called her top people. When you got close to NSD, which I was close to NSD 3 times, I got to go in and spend the day with Mary Kay. But I also want you to know, on the other side of the yardstick, she loved her new beauty consultant. She loved the new consultant. She loved the single mom. She loved the woman that was starting over at 65. She loved the disabled. She loved those women in the company that represented against all odds. And she loved our children, and she loved our husbands.
She did.
She was very aware that there was always a battle in people's homes, because women, something about Mary Kay, even though it's a bona fide business, it becomes a love affair. And we fall in love with this business. We fall in love with what it represents. And when you have a love affair with something like that, there could be a jealousy in the home. And so Mary Kay knew very much that she had to win the husband over, because in a battle, you're always going to lose. A husband's always going to win. Right. So I watched Mary Kay bend over backwards to spend time and to talk to husbands and to pay attention to the children. And when children would send her coloring pictures colored, she would send back love notes, and she would take pictures with the children. And she was extremely respectful, and she knew, and she would also, this is from the very beginning, she told us that after your initial sale, the first $100 that you earn, you're to take that $100 and place it on your husband's pillow. That you were always supposed to work for your husband's support, because with his support, you can be a woman and a half. Without his support, you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle. And so we were to always work on gaining the husband's trust and his support, and make him feel important. And I got to tell you from observation, that how she was so tender to men, to children, to those that were the weakest among us, that the women that were the most fragile, that she was so tender, and that she took so much time. And when her people were trying to rush her through the lines and rush her through the lobbies, if she were speaking to someone that she could tell was brand new, or was maybe someone that you know, just wanted to have a piece for her. She took the time to talk to those people eye to eye. And you could not budge her. You couldn't, if she wanted to speak to someone, you couldn't move her from what she wanted to do. So I was very respectful of that. And one more thing is when you're at a workshop, to stay till the end and thank every single person for being there, and to greet every single person, and to wait till every single person leaves. That Mary Kay, she took time and never sat down, and she took every picture. And I observed that about her. She was a master at making people feel important. She was incredible. And then I also want to say that she was also funny. Loved
I was hoping you were going to tell some funny stories.
She loved that wolf whistle compact I got her. She loved it. And I said, Mary Kay, we should have this as a star prize. And she said, yep, we should. But that Connie White, that Barbara Beasley, they'll never do that. And I went, I know that staff. She was loyal. Do you know that our vendors, you know, the where we get our rings, and where we went on trips, and who we had, Mary Kay was loyal for 40 years to her vendors.
Yes.
That Mr. Bach, he had Mary Kay's loyalty for 40 years. Mary Kay, she just remembers who was there at the beginning, and she was loyal to the time. And when we became a billion-dollar company, it didn't matter. She was loyal to those people that were there.
Well, and you know, you named those people. Well, Ron Trammell, I mean, 17 years old, was in the warehouse. He was the head of the travel department until he died. I mean, well, no, he retired right before he died.
1 year.
And
even Sean Key, I don't know if everybody knows, but Sean Key was he was the kid in New Jersey at the distribution center that put the boxes together.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Mary Kay had a loyalty. To this day,
Yes.
Tom Watley is still comes into the Mary Kay office,
Yes,
and he's a consultant. So, I mean, Mary Kay, the whole process was a loyal family, always.
Well, if you remember that book that I think it was Jim Underwood wrote, More Than a Pink Cadillac, he said it's the only Fortune 500 company, back when we were on the stock market, he said that actually the CEO, which was Mary Kay at the time, had a Rolodex by their first name. He said that does not happen in corporate America, but her Rolodex was by their first name.
And I'll tell you another story. I got to go spend a day with Mary Kay, and she sent me a letter, and she said, come see me. And I called my recruiter director in Nashville was Karen Strom, and I said, I got this letter from Mary Kay that she says wants to come see me. And Karen says, well, go see her. So I called Emma Thompson, and I said, Mary Kay sent me a letter that I'm supposed to come see her. And Emma says, well, when do you want to come? I said, I guess next week. So I got an airline ticket, and I flew out there. And I go into the room, and well, I was kind of close to NSD. I want you to know I was close to NSD 3 times. But,
well, see, this is really good, because the girls have been hearing how many times people fail in DIQ.
Oh, man.
Now that we fell in NSD.
Oh man, listen, unless you fall back a couple times, you didn't pay your dues. Nobody likes you. I mean, you're part of the crew when you got to fall down a couple times so that you're likable. I mean, nobody likes the girl that goes zoom to the top immediately. You know, you look at her and you think she's a freak. Anyway, Mary Kay. So I went to Mary Kay's office, and we sat there, and just some of the conversation. You know what I took her? You know how people, you would think you would take diamonds and gold. You would just take wonderful things to Mary Kay. Well, I took her 2 chocolate pies. I know she loved chocolate.
Chocolate pies like airplane?
I took her 2 chocolate pies.
You can't do that on an airplane anymore. You couldn't.
No, I bought it in Dallas. I went to a pie shop and got her 2 pies, and I took them into her. And she says, well, which hip should I put them on? Should I put them on this hip or this hip? and then we started talking, and she was looking at me. She says, you know, my first husband left me for a woman with your hair color. And I said, oh, I'm sorry, Mary Kay. She says, oh, no, don't worry. She says, he was the Elvis of Houston.
He was the Elvis of Houston.
The Elvis of Houston. So I'm sitting there going, well, here we go. So I mean, we talked about Richard needing a wife. We talked about hostess credit. We talked about how I was doing with my national area. She spoke into my cassette and made a Christmas tape for my people. And then she said that we had a very top director who was a very dear friend of mine going through a very public divorce. And Mary Kay said, do you think she has enough money for this divorce? And I said, I don't know. And I told her some of the particulars. And Mary Kay said, well, would you call her and tell her that if she needs anything, call me? Like, I think Mary Kay would have advanced her whatever she needed to get through her divorce.
Wow.
And I left there, and it got to be 1 o'clock, and I said there was all kinds of people sitting out in the lobby, and I said, well, Mary Kay, I think there's people up there that want to see you. And she says, okay. And I said, I think I got to go to lunch with Jim Harden now. And she says, okay. I think I could have sat there for 2 more hours. I mean, it was an out-of-body experience. And what I'm trying to tell you all is that she became who she had to be, whatever was asked of her. That day, she was to be my mama, my coach, my friend, and she wanted to be, she was like Linda and I are talking. Mm-hmm. And then whoever went in next, she became the businesswoman, the decision maker, the whatever she had to be. I find that absolutely incredible that Mary Kay, she was loyal, she was gracious, and she was generous. It was incredible. And so many of the philanthropy that people don't even know about, the churches she supported, the Sunday schools she helped create, the Dr. Khan and the cancer wing at St. Paul Medical Facility in Dallas. It just goes on and on, the what she gave the armed services, and Mary Kay was generous to a fault. And Linda, you asked me about the fundamentals. What do you think are the fundamentals that Mary Kay bequeathed to us? You know, when you sign that beauty consultant agreement, I know a lot of people, you're going to think this is pretty light, but I really tell people that when they sign their beauty consultant, that they really are stepping into an inheritance. That Mary Kay really did leave an inheritance for all of us, and it starts with that starter kit. And part of the gifts of that inheritance is honesty. That Mary Kay, she wanted everything to be based on honesty, because that's the beginning of trust. And when there's trust, people will follow you when they trust you. And part of having trust is to be honest. You have to be honest with them, and not cruel. I know sometimes I might step over that line because I'm so truthful that sometimes I think maybe my people might think, but I have to be honest with them, because if I'm not honest, then how will they ever trust me? And I believe that she also gave us that whole concept that a woman has to be a woman of her word. That if it is to be, it's up to me, and you have to be a woman of your word. That if we say we're going to be somewhere and we're not, and we don't call or text and let them know what happened, that there was a flat tire or my kid got sick, you have to be a woman of your word, or the trust is broken. You know, if I can't rely on you being a woman of your word 2, 3, or 4 times, then the trust bond is broken, and then the leadership is broken. Right. And then you have to be resilient. She gave us a gift of resiliency, that she taught us that under, over, around, or through, that you're going to find the way that you're going to get to your goal. And even though I live in Pigeon, Michigan, she always told us you can bloom where you're planted. And she was from Sweetwater, Texas. And against all odds, that Mary Kay created this company. Well, that's a gift for all of us. It doesn't matter whether you live, if you lived in downtown New York or in Miami or Los Angeles, it's got its own set of problems that living rule does. Everybody's got something that they have to overcome, whether it's distance or whether it's insecurity, whatever it is, we all have that thing. But resilience is the ability to say, if someone else did it, so can I. And so I have to find my way. Learn to pivot. That's another. So learning to pivot is a gift that is something that you gain from Mary Kay, because if plan A doesn't work, have plan B, have plan C, have plan D, and sometimes plan E. And being the ability to learn to pivot and understand the importance of pivoting. And that is very important to where you're going to go in your career. And not only is it important in your career, but it becomes important in your everyday life. When you're faced with a problem, learning to look, is there some other way? Being able to go up, under, over, and around. And then the other thing is learning to pray. Mary Kay, whenever she was faced, actually, I know she prayed hourly. She was a very devout woman. But to take Mary Kay as your business partner, to really understand that worry is a problem with self-control. When you're a control freak, which many of us are, that we tend to want to take control and want to worry, but that's not our job. Our job is to have faith and to allow God to handle the burden. And that's a walk. That's a walk. And I am grateful that in my Mary Kay career that I was always strengthened through that walk, that I was to pray and give up the control to him, because he knew me before I was in the womb. And then to be goal focused. That without a goal, I often tell the story that this is a real fun thing for the directors in the room, or for Sunday school classes, and for anything. If you want to teach anything about goals, go to the dollar store and buy up those little party bullseyes, and take the darts and give everybody a dart, and then tell them to take the dart and throw the dart. And people will say, well, where do you want me to throw the dart? And you just say, no, I just told you to throw the dart. And if you have 10 people will throw the dart in 10 different directions so they don't poke anybody's eye out. And then take the little bullseye and put it on a chair. Give them back the darts and say, okay, now throw the dart. And people will say, should I throw it at the bullseye? And I'll say, your choice, throw your dart. And all 10 people will queue up and they will throw their bullseye or their dart at the bullseye. And some will hit the chair, and some will hit just below it, and some will hit the bullseye. But what's so incredible is that all 10 will come within a foot of the bullseye, which is a perfect example of, if you have a goal, if you shoot for the moon, you're going to land amongst the stars. You're going to get somewhere close to the bullseye. And if you just keep getting closer and closer and closer, eventually that bullseye will be met. And then you have to develop a new goal and a new bullseye. And goal focused is the only way to build a business in Mary Kay. And I'm also reminded that God's delay is not God's denial. I've been denied so many times, and I had to understand that I wasn't cooked yet. Sometimes we think that we're ready for the next step, but we're really not cooked yet. And sometimes that falling down is just preparing us to be further cooked, so that when we finally get there, that we have a deeper understanding for other people's feelings. That girl that goes from point A to Z, zoom, it's all about her. I'm not speaking about anybody specifically, but I just want you to know that people who find success without a lot of delay or a lot of disruption or falling down, really, I don't feel are given the gift of empathy, that they can't feel other people's feelings. And if you can't feel other people's feelings, people won't trust you. They don't care how much you know. They want to know how much you care about them. And so it's all about that empathy and understanding.
Well, that is so interesting, Sherill, because until I went through my divorce, I was probably one of those people that, I have a limited amount of empathy. I'm the girl that says, whatever. And then when I went through the divorce, like if I knew someone who was going through a divorce with my circumstances, I would have said, now, honey, here's the 10 things you did wrong, and here's how to get it fixed. And
that's right.
Act back together. Okay, that would have been the old me. But once I went through it, I realized I didn't need anybody to tell me what to do. I didn't appreciate people telling me what I did wrong or anything. I just wanted people to say, I love you. Mm-hmm. And I'm praying for you. And I know this hurts. And if I had not gone through that divorce, I don't know that I would have ever learned that lesson in my entire life. That valuable life lesson of empathy. I don't have to fix you. I just have to love you. And that was huge.
Divorce, losing a child, cancer, being fired from a job, someone in your family with a drug problem, all the things that befall our lives, and unless you're given some of those things on your shoulders, you don't know how to work with other people. And so, sometimes people, they feel that they've been branded. Oh my gosh, I fell off DIQ, or, oh, I had to step back. I had to resubmit my directorship, or I was in a Cadillac and now I'm in a Grand Prix and now I got to go back to Cadillac, or all the things that happen. And you have to look at those things, that they're tempering you, that they're preparing you, that they're making you a deeper, a more understanding, a kinder person, a more generous of spirit person.
Well, as we wrap up here, Sherill, you know, our world has changed a lot since 2000 when Mary Kay passed. If she were with us in this room today in 2017, what advice would she say to us in our day and time? Or is it really that different than it was in 1973 or 83 or whatever?
You froze.
Oh.
You froze that whole thing. You froze.
Okay, all right, let's do it.
You were like stationary.
All right, let me try that again.
Okay.
It's 2017, and if Mary Kay came back today, a lot has happened in 17 years since she's been gone. Would she pivot because of the times, or would she take us back to the same place? I mean, we're speculating here. I mean, we don't know.
Oh, no, I know.
Okay.
Mary Kay, because of the life she lived, was strong in her convictions. She'd been abandoned. She'd been divorced. She'd been widowed. She'd lost a daughter. She had public business issues in the public. She had her company. Y'all know about Jackie Brown? Mary Kay.
They don't know Jackie Brown's story.
Oh, well, I'll tell you that story. You know, because these are all the stories of why Mary Kay was so strong in her conviction. Mary Kay was a brand new. The company had like gotten off its feet. It had probably been a year or 2 years in the making, and Mary Kay was having these director meetings every month. And Jesse Hughes Logan was in that room as like a 21-year-old director.
Really? I didn't know Jesse had been around that long.
Oh, yeah. And to hear the stories, I'll tell you someone else that if you ever want to get anybody in, it would be, oh my gosh, she's from Illinois. She's married to Ed.
Okay, back
she's
there.
my outline.
Sandy Miller?
Nope. Idell Moffat to Colleen Chadley.
Okay.
Colleen Chadley is really the keeper of the stories in this company. Colleen Chadley and Laquita McCollum.
Okay. Well, Laquita is the person in the famous picture of the girl kissing the pink Cadillac with the knife.
Yes. And Laquita drove Mary Kay to all 10 of those shows when she had the 10-party week.
Yeah. Okay.
She was her chauffeur.
Okay.
Okay. So Colleen, I heard this story from Colleen and from Jesse Hughes Logan that Mary Kay was maybe the company was 2 or 3 years old. And by this time she had top directors, and out of the original came a woman named Jackie Brown, who was charismatic, was vivacious. Everybody loved Jackie Brown. And one day at the director meeting, Jackie Brown walks in and she says, Mary Kay, I'd like to say something from the front of the room. And Mary Kay sat down in the front of the room and said, there's the floor. And Jackie Brown got up and said, well, ladies, guess what? I'm starting my own cosmetics company. She went back to the high tanner's daughter, and together they colluded, and they were going to create their own cosmetic, which actually then ended up being beauty control. It actually did evolve into beauty control, but then got sold out to a petroleum company. But anyway, Jackie Brown got up and said, I'm going to start my own cosmetic company, and I want y'all to come with me. Well, like 10 or 15 people got up and walked out with Jackie Brown. And because she was so charismatic and people liked Jackie Brown, a lot of people were kind of like, okay, I'm just going to go with Jackie. And Mary Kay got up, and then she continued her sales meeting as if nothing had happened. And there were directors in the room that said they were so embarrassed for what Jackie just did, and that they would embarrass Mary Kay, and that there was a profound moment like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she just did that. And directors stayed in their seats out of respect for Mary Kay. And years later, they were so glad they did, because they went on to become national sales directors. And Jackie Brown ended up to be just a real estate person in Dallas. Like, her wealth never accumulated to vast wealth. And had Jackie Brown stayed with Mary Kay, she'd have been greater than both Helen McVoy and Daleen White.
Wow. Well, I knew that story. I tell that in Director Boot Camp, but I didn't have the full version. I love you, Sherill. You always give me
They're really embarrassed. I mean, I've been told about how she was so, like, maybe she was just going to make an announcement that she was going to do whatever and she was leaving the company, but she wanted everybody, she proselytized in front of Mary Kay in the director's meeting, and that it was so embarrassing, and that people were so humble. I mean, they were just so starstruck to think that she would do that. And they stayed out of respect to Mary Kay, and they were glad they did.
So all of this strength leads us to the advice that Mary Kay would give us.
Yes, I have this prepared.
Well, because you know me, Sherill, we could sit here and talk. I mean, we could just spend the rest of the day because this.
I mean, and then the longer we go, the more we tell the dirt. Oh, anyway. Okay.
The stuff we can't record.
The stuff you can't repeat that you'd have to cut out of this thing. Okay. I think that Mary Kay, if she were here today, she would still say that an inch of profiles is worth more than an ounce of gold. That she would tell you your fortune is found in your people. That the more customers you have, the more you have a successful business. That 50 should grow to 100, 100 should grow to 150, and should grow to 200. Customers, the more customers you have, the more you'll be fed for a lifetime. You know, you can have a baby, you can go through a divorce, you can have an illness, you can have things happen, but I'll tell you what, if you have a lifeline to your customers, you will have a constant feed of income, because that profile book, that was my topic yesterday at our director meeting, is that profile book, that if you actually, I know that today with digitals and all this other stuff, but there's something valuable about profiles with receipts stapled to them. And the fattest profiles will always feed you. You know, I always tell people about how if you take a profile book, and if you keep all your profiles in a 5x7 profile book, and, you know, the more books you have, the more you have customers. You know, you want to grow to have like 5 books, you know, A through Z. But when you take a profile book and you do this with it, it'll always open to the fattest profiles. And women who buy a lot will always buy more. And so I think that Mary Kay would still talk about that an inch of profiles is worth more than an ounce of gold. And that our job is to continually update and build our customer and client base, because that'll take you even through your old age. That I believe that she would still say today that a party given is worth 3 times what a facial is. You know, people are running around and they're always, you know, seeing one-on-one, but the truth is your time is valuable. And if you're going to invest 2 hours, why wouldn't you want to invest 2 hours in 6 or 7 or 8 women versus investing in just one? Parties are still the most valuable way to increase your book of business. The next thing is do what you say you're going to do. Be a woman of your word. If you told your client when you first met your first customer and you met her and you told her you're going to call her every other month or call her every month, whatever she just told you she wanted to, and if you say, how often would you love me to call you? And she says, once a month would be great. Then by golly, you better call once a month. Be a woman of your word. People trust people who are women of their word. When you are not a woman of your word, you break your trust and she will not value you, and then she will look for other beauty consultants. I mean, I just want you to know that people go where they can trust and where there's loyalty. And so whatever you say, whatever is agreed upon, you have to follow through with that. She would, she says, call me again. Oh, and she would also say when we're talking with our prospects, I think there's a disease in Mary Kay that we're women of one night stand. We share the marketing plan, and if she doesn't say yes, we move on. But the truth is, if in that room you had everybody raise their hand, how many times they have to hear the marketing plan before they said yes? And so when you're sharing the marketing plan with someone and she said, I just cannot see myself doing this at this moment. And of course you go through all the avenues of, you know, overcoming your objections and all these things. But if there is a genuine reason why today is not the day, to ask her, do I have your permission to call you again in 3 months and in 6 months? And if she says yes, call her again in 3 months and in 6 months. And you will find that consistent follow-up based on agreed upon, she will eventually sign. Because once a seed is planted, I believe that seeds will always produce fruit. Whether she becomes a consultant or she becomes a great customer, she becomes a great hostess, or she'll go with you to things, something good will come from that if you follow up on her. And also Mary Kay was always a big proponent of taking the next step. Mary Kay always said, and what's your next step? And she always said, laurels rested upon wilt. And so you were always to have the next goal. And I believe she still say that today, so that as you're a beauty consultant, your next step is to be a senior consultant. And then your next step is to be a star recruiter. And then your next step is to be a team leader. And your next step is to be a future director. Your next step is to be a DIQ. Your next step is to be a director. Your next step is to be a senior. Your next step is to be an exec. Your next step is to be a future national. There are all these steps. Now, some steps may take a while. It took me a long time. But I always was looking for the next step, because I knew that Mary Kay created this as a, she believed in her, she believed in the marketing plan. And the marketing plan doesn't say that you come in and become a consultant and then you stay a consultant for 40 years. That's not what it says. It says that you're to become a senior, and then from a senior to become, and they reward you with that love check. And I want to, hey, by the way, this has got nothing to do with Mary Kay. I just have to say this something. Do you know that in life, there is no free money? Even Social Security, you paid in. There is no free money. And I'm always marvel at the money that is paid by our company to people that this person might have recruited someone 4 years ago, doesn't even know the girl's name. They haven't spoken to in 2 years. And the company continues to send a love check. I believe that a love check is truly the only free money in life. And you know, if a girl would take, I really work intently with my people to grow their love checks to $300. I'm always saying, if you could just get yourself, I mean, I know you may not have aspirations for anything more, but if I can get you to be conscious to grow a $300 love check, and that you had your third account. Now, I'm going to talk about money too in just a minute. But if you would take your third account and you put all your love checks, because people don't value their love checks. You don't have, very few times at a sales meeting does anybody come and say, oh man, I got a $16 love check this month. You don't hear people talk about anything. They don't even talk about a $100 love check. They just get it and they spend it. And so there's no value. So I believe that if every woman were to bank their love checks for 1 year, that they would always have enough money in there to take their families on a 3-star vacation. And love checks are so incredible, and that if you would bank them, they'd become more valuable. Get off my soapbox for just a minute on that one. Okay, always take the next step. She appraised the team leader as much as she praised the future national, because Mary Kay was all about growth and always taking the next step and always taking on the next goal. And this is where the money comes in. And I believe Mary Kay still today would tell us to bank our dollars. Mary Kay was very much the little girl from Sweetwater, Texas, and the divorced mother and the mother that was abandoned. And she was always telling her people to save their money for a rainy day. And this is, I got to tell you 2 more stories. So on one of the top director trips back in the day when they only took the top nationals on the trip, and they were in Paris, and Maxine Sandvig bought 2 watches. I mean, exquisite watches, expensive watches. I bet they were $10,000 to $12,000 watches. And she brought them to lunch, and she said to Mary Kay, so Mary Kay, which one do you like better? Do you think I should keep them both? And Mary Kay, because she loved us, said, no, I think you should return them both. And she said, you too? And Mary Kay said, there'll come a day when that watch you're going to need that money for a rainy day. And she wanted Maxine to take those watches back and get her money back and put them in the bank. And then the other one was one time, and I don't know, Linda, were you at the table? This was in Ireland. Were you in Ireland? Were you $1 million director in Ireland?
No, I was not.
So we're $1 million director.
That was, never mind. Go ahead.
We were in Ireland. It's $1 million dinner, and Mary Kay would take her $1 million dinners to a private dinner on the top director trip. So we were in Ireland, and we went to this lovely restaurant, and there were probably 10 of us at the table. And I remember Kathy Lou and Debbie Moore and Joanne Cunnington, and we were all around the table, and Mary Kay was sitting at the head, and when she'd speak, you know, we'd all lean forward on the table, we'd listen. And Mary Kay looked at all of us. You know, we were in all of our finery. You know, back in those days, you know, you bought clothes just for the trip, and you put them in a closet. You never wore them again. You just wore them on the top director trip. So we were all in our finery. You know, we were all those princesses and princesses. You know, prince and princesses in the Bible. You know, that would be summoned to the banquet. We were all at that table. And Mary Kay looked down at the table and she said, "You know, aren't you amazed at how great the jackets in the clothing line is at J.C. Penney's this year?" I mean, everybody looked at each other and went, what? And she said, yes, it's just amazing how beautiful the line is at JCPenney's. And she went on and on and on and told us about how she was shopping for these T-tops, and she found out they were $90. Why she didn't buy them. She took them right back and put them on the rack. She wasn't going to buy $90 for a little piece of fabric. And then she went on to tell us about her garage sale and about how she did this garage sale and how it was over in 1 hour, and how she sold, and how they sold everything in the great house, and they even sold the shelving, and they sold the umbrellas. And her granddaughters came in at 9 o'clock. She was going to fix some sandwiches, and they came in and they said, well, Nana, it's all gone. And how she was so proud, and she was going to do another garage sale. Well, by the time she was finished, you know, it's like at church, you don't really quite understand the sermon until the end of the sermon. Well, we understood that Mary Kay was telling us we spend too doggone much on our clothes, and that there's going to come a day where that money would best suit us for a rainy day. And she was forever the smart single mom that understood that money put away is going to be money that will serve you in a day when it's needed.
Well,
and
you know what?
I remember being humbled.
That is so interesting, because I'm in a boxer group with Kathy Goff Brummett and Bat, who have just retired, Pam Shaw and Jan Thetford, and it's just kind of our little private boxer group. And our discussion on a weekly basis is exactly what you just said. I would love to have all the money for all the clothes, for all the stuff that I didn't need, that I'm now trying to get rid of, and how important it is for us to teach our directors. You know, when you're making $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month, you know, that our first instinct is let's go buy a bigger house and let's go buy nicer stuff, instead of let's put that money away, because she is exactly right. You want that money later on. But yeah, you know, he's talking about Mary Kay and being frugal. I mean, my two best memories of her has to do with, we were in Switzerland, and Dave and I were coming down the elevator, and so she's at the, you know, getting on the elevator as we're coming off, and she's got a McDonald's bag. Okay, you know, she always traveled with her hot sauce because she couldn't stand like food in England or Paris or any place. So she had always had her hot sauce in her purse. And so she was sitting there with her bodyguard, and she had a McDonald's bag, and she goes, I just can't take this food anymore. I had to go get myself some real food. And, you know, the most famous story even from those days was like when we checked out of the top director trip, you know, your hotel was paid for, your meals were all paid for. But when you went out on your own, or you had a massage or whatever, that was on your checkout bill. And it was like, she was horrified to learn that we had spent 1 penny of our own money. She was horrified.
Ron Trammell would say that Mary Kay, everybody's bill was however much it was, and Mary Kay's bill was never more than $2.50. She wouldn't even let Irma order off the menu. And I want, you know, I just got to tell one more story about how I got attention from Mary Kay. Where Mary Kay really gave me some attention was that I got to sit next to her on a dinner cruise. And I had this darling little top. I was much smaller, darling little top. And she said, I love your top. And I said, Mary Kay, it's a Victor Costa original. And Mary Kay says, I know that. Well, Victor Costa was her personal dressmaker. He would make her seminar gown. And she said, I know that. She said, where did you get that? I mean, because it's like one of my first director trips, and I got the privilege to sit next to her, and I got this cute little top on, and she could tell it's a Victor Costa original. And then I told her, I said, well, I have a director by MacDill Air Force Base, and there's this little shop, and this guy buys seconds from Neiman Marcus by the pound, and he had this little hole in the wall shop, and everything just hung on lines, and you could go in there and buy real stuff for pennies on the dollar because he had bought it by the pound. It was maybe a mile from MacDill's Air Force Base gates. And I bought this little top, and I saw it was Victor Costa. I knew that was her dressmaker. And so I bought this little top, and I had it on, and I said to Mary Kay where I got it. And she said, well, how much did you pay for it? And I said, $12.50. From that point on, I'm telling you, I became her daughter. She loved that top was $12.50, and I found it at a pennies on the pound shop. Oh, she loved that. I think she thought she was going to go there.
The other famous story you haven't told is that when you did Mary Kate's makeup in the bathroom on a trip. You have not told that story.
Okay. So for all of you who've not made a trip yet, that you're just close, just haven't made a trip yet, it's normal to feel nervous. Like all of us, when we go on a director trip, we're like, what do we wear? I mean, they know we're so nervous that when you get your tickets, you get a piece of paper that tells you what to pack and what to wear for every event.
Yeah.
Because they learned a long time ago that women are so nervous about what they're going to wear and how they're going to be accepted and all this stuff. So it says what to wear for every event. And so you're so nervous and you get there and you just want to be accepted. And it's kind of there's a passage, there's like a rite of passage, and the people that have been on the trips before, they know instinctively they're to welcome the newbies. And so you are really embraced when you're a brand new sales director. People know that you're scared pea green. And so they will embrace you. Well, you're on such good behavior the first 3 days of the trip. I mean, you would pinch your husband's leg if he laughs too loud. And so you're trying to be really perfect the first 3 days. But by day 3, all of a sudden you find out everybody's the same as you. And maybe there's even some people that are goofier than you. I mean, on my trips, to have Cindy Williams miss the train and have to get a cab and go to another train station to get on the train, or to watch Calebram come down and oversleep and she has to come down with her head wet. All of a sudden, we're all the same. It's all okay, right? You feel well, you feel comfortable. So now by day 4, you're your real self. And so you're starting to gossip and you're starting to, everybody's like normal now. So we're on our way out to Versailles, and we stop at this beautiful country estate, and Ron Trammell has it all set up. It's like a banquet. It would be something that you would have as a banquet. We're all in just slacks and tops, and we're on our way out for this tour, and that we're at this fabulous resort. And now it's time to get back on the buses to go to Versailles, and we have to rush to the bathroom. And so now it's day 4. So we're in the bathroom telling stories, we're saying things we shouldn't say. And so we're all yapping. And right in the middle of all the yapping, out of the toilet comes Mary Kay. And I remember that there must have been 5 of us all in that bathroom going, oh crap, what did we just say? Oh no, there comes Mary Kay. And so we're thinking we're going to be chastised because we're really gossiping. And she walks out, and she was so tiny. And she walked out and she came up to me and she says, okay, do me. And I said, like, you want me to do your face? And she said, yep, do me. And I'm thinking, now you got to switch gears. You're thinking that you got caught being naughty. And then all of a sudden, here comes Mary Kay, and she says, do me. And I said, okay, Mary Kay. So I'd open up my cosmetic bag. Well, of course, if just in this hour, you understand what my personality's like. That's what my cosmetic bag looks like. And it was filthy. And so I had to take things out, and I did Mary Kay's face. And I took a pencil, and it was called Evergreen. And I lined her eyes with Evergreen, my favorite color, looked beautiful on her. And she looked in the mirror and she says, what is that? I said, oh, Mary Kay, it's Evergreen. She says, don't tell me we don't make it anymore. Mary Kay, we don't. She says, why does that happen? Just when you start to like something, we don't make it anymore. And I said, well, Mary Kay, you might have to do something about that. And Rita Potter had the presence of mind to take a picture of me doing Mary Kay's face. And she sent me that picture, and I took it to seminar or to leadership or someplace, and I showed it to Mary Kay, and Mary Kay put on the back, to my personal beauty consultant. Oh. Yeah, I knew that would make everybody do that. I was like, she heard what we were saying. She knew we were all being naughty. It was day 4, we were being real. And she made herself one of us. I just cannot tell you what a unique, original, amazing, intuitive, empathetic, just what kind of an amazing woman she was. And the other day I had to call and fix some orders, and I was put on hold, and I was listening to Pearls of Wisdom, and it was just the day of days, and I started crying, and I started sobbing because she was in my office, and she was talking to me. I could cry. I could tear up right now telling you the story. And I'm really crying because they had me on, I was sitting there for at least 10, 15 minutes. And when the girl came on, I said, I have to compose myself. you know, I just had Mary Kay in my office for 10 minutes. And I said, I have to compose myself. I have to have a moment. And I had to swallow, and I had to take a Kleenex and wipe my eyes. And then I had to go about telling about the story. But I want you to know that that woman was just what you hear, that if you get the chance to hear pearls of wisdom, play it in your office while you're doing your work and let her be in your office. And she will mentor you. And just her voice and how soothing and how calm and how assured she is, and how your opportunity is intact and how your future is set. And it goes back to, I know you before you were in the womb, that if you really love this company and you are here and you're spending this time with Linda today, and that you really are wanting to be part of this family, take the next step. Just take the next step. If you're too afraid of what you see down the road, just take the next step, and then take the next step, and have trust in those that are leading you, and trust them enough to listen to what they say and emulate them, and be a woman of your word, and build that trust with your people. And bank your money. That's one of my last things is really bank your money. You know, we don't feel integritous when we're in debt. And this business is all about making money. And I know, Linda, this isn't part of our notes, but I really feel strongly about this, that we're to teach our people, inspect our people's money. I taught at a class the other day, and someone said, it makes me nervous to talk about people's money. And I said, well, but that's where we are. We're coaches. We're business coaches. And when a girl, I even have a class, and Linda, you're privileged to it. It's so simple. It's Banking 101. And
you could send me that.
Yes, and I want to tell you, this is my final story. I had a girlfriend when I was brand new. I'm here in Pigeon, and I was faithful. If they told me to observe 3 classes and hold my first 10, I did that. I really, honestly, in my first year, was told to have 5 parties every week, and I owned a flower business, and I was in a bowling league, and I was a Sunday school teacher, and I was on the chamber board, and I held my 5 classes every single week on Mondays and Tuesdays. I held 3 on one day and 2 on the other. And people say, how'd you get your shows to book? I said, I gave more away. You got more hostess credit in the morning. If you booked a morning show, you got triple hostess credit. If you did it in the afternoon, you got double. And if you did it at night, you got single. And I told people, if you book in this purple area, you're going to get more hostess credit. If you book in the blue, you're going to get that much hostess credit. If you book in the pink, you're going to get that much hostess credit. And so I faithfully, for 1 year, held 5 shows every week until I went back to seminar, because my director told me to do that, and to ask one person from every class the marketing plan. But because I was too naive to ask what the marketing plan was, I instead shortcutted, and I would say to the most interested person, would you come with me on my next class? And if they came with me, I knew I'd recruited them, because people would not go with me if they weren't interested. But one more thing I want to say to you is that my director was so good that she would ask me every week what my sales were, how did I divide my money, and she used to always make me go and buy something for myself. So my first thing was a coat that was $350. I'd never had a coat that expensive. My most expensive coat I ever had was $50. And she made me put on layaway, and she made me go and get that out of layaway. And then it was, the next thing was some curtains for my house. And then the next thing was a trip for my kids. And then the next thing was a Chevette hatchback that I sold for the same amount of money when I won my first car. I sold that hatchback, and it was for the same amount of money I bought it for. And then the next thing was my house. I took on my house mortgage. And so the thing I want you to know is Karen always was concerned about where I was putting my money. And I don't think we do that enough. And I think that we have to teach our people that if money comes into the house, it's gone. Money in a money bag, if it's not banked, evaporates. You know, if you have $100 in your money bag and you go through McDonald's and you spend $15, you'll never remember that McDonald's purchase at $15. And you don't remember the $100 in the kitchen when the kids need 40 for school and the husband needs 20 for gas. I mean, you just don't remember that money. That money that's not tracked is not valuable. And so Kathy Campbell, when I was a brand new consultant, I was going to observe my 3 classes, and they found her. She was a newly divorced woman who was out of an abusive relationship, and she had moved to Carroll, Michigan, which is 2 hours from her old home. And she lived in a 1-room apartment, and she lived on her Mary Kay. And so I observed 3 classes, and I also went with her for a day of reorders. And every single time she got a reorder, we went through the bank. And after every show, she went through the bank, and she would divide her money between account A and account B. And she told me that the only way she could survive and support herself was that she had to divide her money and pay herself a paycheck every Friday. And you know, I don't understand why people want to pay themselves every day when they've never had that before. Most people are paid every Friday. So if you treat your business as a business, and what you do is you take 50% of all sales, and it goes into account A, including tax, hostess credit, and I'm on a soapbox that I believe everybody should charge $2 shipping and handling. In some cases, I think it should be $3. But if everybody had to pay $2 to $3 shipping and handling, and other direct selling companies are charging $8.95 and sometimes $10 for shipping and handling, you'd always cover all your shipping and handling. Your business should pay for its own self. You should never have to take out of your profit for the business to survive.
Right.
And so if you will do that in account A, and then in account B is the money left over. But then out of account B, you need to take, I teach that you have to take 10% of your account B, and it should go in an envelope in a place in your home that nobody knows. Because I also believe what Mary Kay told me so many years ago, that 2 out of 10 women live in a situation where they shouldn't live. And that I'm very respectful that I am a business coach to women that I don't know their story. Not everybody shares their story with you. Some share too much, but not everybody shares their story. And I believe that women should always have a 10% account in an envelope in liquid cash in their home. I tell them it can be for tithing, it can be for travel expenses, and it can be an emergency fund. And for some women, $500 can mean the difference between staying in that house or leaving.
Right. That's right.
And so that account A, that account B, after every appointment, it's so much easier to drive through your bank, even at night on the way home, and put in a night deposit and get rid of it, so that when your kids say, Mama, I need $40, and say, so do I. And on Friday, when Mama's paid, I'll give you that $40. And it's so much more valuable than on Friday when you write yourself when you take that money out of that account B and you lay it on the kitchen table and said, oh my gosh, Mary Kay gave us a bonus $300 this week, and here it is, what should we do with it? It becomes so much more valuable. And again, with the love check, a $16 love check is not valuable. But when it's accumulated over 12 months and you end up with $1,000 in 12 months and you say, okay, we have $1,000 to $1,500 to go on vacation, where shall we go? And then it becomes valuable.
Right.
And so I just want you to know that I believe Mary Kay would still teach us that today, that to teach women to be smart with their money. And I know that a lot of people say, well, how can you bank $75? You know, I did $75 this week. I had a $50 week. How can I bank that? Well, yes, you can. And when you do that, money accumulated.
I think so.
Thinking positive, I'm great, I can, I will. Learning to empower yourself. And she said, take the word enriching others seriously. Financially, are people making money? Are they banking their money? Growth. Are they going farther? Are they farther today than they are 1 year ago? And spiritually, speak truth and give him the praise and the glory. And don't worry, give him the control. And
we love you. Here in Southern Indiana, Sherill Steinman, you're getting a standing ovation.
There you go, gang.
Uh-oh. Okay, so much for that plan.
Yay!
Bye-bye, Sherill.
Bye, honey. Have a great day.